Call of Duty Ghosts is definitely one of the most polarizing Call of Duty games in franchise history. It definitely was the first major Call of Duty game that had relatively mixed reviews as far as the community was concerned, and kind of marked the end of a golden era of Call of Duty before Activision started throwing new ideas at the wall to try to refine and re-energize the Call of Duty franchise. And while a lot of fans were rightfully so disappointed in Call of Duty Ghosts, there also were a ton of people, myself and Luke included, who really enjoyed Call of Duty Ghosts despite all of its criticisms. Of course, we can't ignore the shortcomings of the game, but just as we have checked out a ton of other Call of Duty games on this channel, today we are going to be taking a look back at Call of Duty Ghosts and explore what made this game tick, and does this game still hold up today by 2018 standards? Let's get into it. After the huge success that was Call of Duty Black Ops 2, everyone's eyes were back on Infinity Ward, who would be making the 10th Call of Duty game for release in 2013. At this point, Infinity Ward had a pretty good reputation in the Call of Duty community as they made the Modern Warfare trilogy, and even though everyone was actually expecting a Modern Warfare 4 announcement, Infinity Ward decided to go a different route and launch a new series within the Call of Duty franchise of games. And while this game wasn't Modern Warfare 4, you could definitely see a lot of the Modern Warfare trilogy represented in Call of Duty Ghosts reveal trailer, more so than the futuristic stuff that we had a year before with Black Ops 2. Plus, they used the really awesome Eminem track to promote the game, which was something that they had done in past Modern Warfare games that really made the game look fun, and of course the game ended up actually being good though. Nevertheless, at the Xbox One reveal, Call of Duty Ghosts was shown off, and actually would be one of the last Call of Duty games to have this exclusive content first deals on Xbox before switching over to PlayStation. But for the most part, Call of Duty Ghosts was seen as a pretty big deal. Everyone was really hyped for the game because it looked like a Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4, except obviously it was going to be launching a new story. And obviously there was some major symbolism because Ghost was such a major character in Modern Warfare 2, so people were kind of hyped to see that homage being paid. And despite this game being promoted sort of as the first next-gen Call of Duty game, the game released first November 5th on Xbox 360, PC, and PS3, before releasing alongside the PS4 2 weeks later and the Xbox One 3 weeks later. And once the game was out, it was meh. That's as far as the community saw the game. Despite the title of the game obviously paying homage to a major character from Modern Warfare 2, this game actually scraps the entire storyline developed in the Modern Warfare trilogy and decides to go its own route of kind of rebooting a sub-series within the Call of Duty franchise. The main story of the game takes place 10 years after a major attack on the United States, and during that 10-year period, the US kind of lost its position as a world superpower. With that, the United States is being invaded, and a small unit of special operations soldiers called Ghosts must both not only defend their country, but survive, I guess. The story here is kind of convoluted, but sticks to the general Modern Warfare storyline to an extent. Mind you, this game is still only 2 years after the release of Modern Warfare 3, so that story was fresh in the mind of players when playing through this game, and honestly, Call of Duty Ghosts, it isn't a bad campaign, it just didn't really provide anything new or exciting, and a lot of the things seemed almost forced. Like, they give you a brother, they give you a dad, and they give you a couple other characters that are always around you that kind of make you feel like you're supposed to care about them, but they never really do anything important enough to make you feel like you care. While the gameplay itself is actually okay, and actually takes you to some pretty great looking set pieces for a Call of Duty campaign, the narrative line in this game is just so either recycled or corny and over the top at the same time. One scene that really sticks out to me is when Logan finds out that his dad wasn't dead, but a ghost all along, and because of that, he becomes initiated as a ghost in a helicopter.
But your father's not there anymore. Dad!
It's just really forced and was just really corny. I remember watching this scene and kind of chuckling to myself because of how awful it was. It was like watching a bad movie. It was pretty rough. Besides that, there were also a ton of reused assets and animations from other Call of Duty games, probably due to time restraints, to make some cutscenes look good, but the fan base caught on, and Call of Duty Ghosts kind of got a reputation of not being as polished as the other Call of Duty games in the franchise. Oh, and spoiler alert to the end of the game. If you don't want to hear the spoilers, skip a minute ahead. The ending of the game is just absolutely awful. I mean, all that work to kill this dude, and he's still alive somehow, and then the main character gets dragged off in a cliffhanger ending that never gets finished because they never made a Call of Duty Ghosts 2. They tried to pull the Modern Warfare 2 thing, leaving you on a cliffhanger, but then they just never came back to the franchise. One day! Maybe one day! That all being said, the campaign wasn't boring by any means. It was fun to play through. I don't regret playing through it, it just wasn't anything over the top amazing. But while a ton of fans really do enjoy the Call of Duty campaigns, a lot of them find the true value of buying a Call of Duty game in its multiplayer, and the Call of Duty Ghosts multiplayer really had mixed receptions. The multiplayer had a lot of different things going for it. They really did try to build this Call of Duty game from the ground up and do something different, which is commendable. Everything about the multiplayer feels fresh and at least individually looked at. However, it didn't really work out as far as gameplay was concerned. It's almost like they put all their time into developing new features, but not enough time into actually play testing the game. The game takes on the same pick 10 type create a class system that Call of Duty Black Ops 2 had, and that worked really well, but instead of doing create a class, they made a create a soldier feature. As you progress through the multiplayer ranking system and level up and eventually reach max level, you can start a new soldier in the form of a prestige. But because of the system, there actually ended up only being 9 prestiges instead of the typical 10, except you could reset your character, which was kind of interesting, but it just didn't really seem as thought out because there was only 9 prestiges. Didn't Modern Warfare 3 have like 100 after a while? Or something? Luke, put the amount of Modern Warfare 3 prestiges at the end of the game's run. All of the maps in the game were actually dynamic, which was kind of interesting. There was something unique of every map that could be interacted with or that would affect the gameplay in one way or another, which was a really cool feature, and this was the first Call of Duty to introduce sliding. Yeah, Call of Duty Black Ops, they had dolphin diving, but this game let you slide around, which ended up being a feature that is still in Call of Duty today. They did introduce leaning, similar to what you play on like a PC version of Call of Duty, but it didn't really work as well as it works on the PC. You kind of had to be aiming in behind cover, and it was just a little awkward. They also tweaked the guns in the game to do much more damage, which also resulted in people dying a little bit quicker. It kind of was like everyone had stopping power from the older Call of Duties, but maybe even amped up a little bit more. But one thing I noticed right away when I first started playing Call of Duty Ghosts is that the user interface just works so well, and it looks really good here. I love the way the minimap worked. It was a lot wider, and the little menu on the screen showing all of the kills and deaths that you had, I actually really appreciated. Some people complained about it, they could go play hardcore, whatever. The UI actually looked really good. And at this point of the review, the Call of Duty Ghosts multiplayer actually looks really fun. The real issue lies in the game's level design. At times it feels like Call of Duty Ghosts may be intended to have 18 players in a game instead of the typical 12, because the maps are just so large compared to other Call of Duty games. Sure, there were games like Call of Duty World at War that had really big maps, but they also had really small maps that kept the gameplay varied at times, along with giant tanks on the large maps that added a whole nother gameplay level. But for whatever reason, the maps in this game were just enormous. And instead of taking on the typical 3-lane style of map, they kind of mixed it up with having arena type gameplay with sometimes 6 to 8 intersecting lanes that really made it easy to be flanked and for the spawns to be trapped or reset. It kind of goes to show you that just because you have a bigger map, it doesn't necessarily stop people from spawn killing. However, not all of the maps were bad, but enough of the maps ruined the gameplay for a lot of players, resulting in why Call of Duty Ghosts is often looked at as one of the worst Call of Duty games. Especially since this is coming from the people who made Modern Warfare 2 with pretty much every map in that game being perfect, and even Modern Warfare 3, 90% of the maps were great. Anyways, let's look at the maps. Prison Break actually could have been a really great map, and it works more or less well, other than the really tight pathway on the top of the hill and the actual guard tower where people just camp all day long. It really made a lot of game types not fun. However, Infection was kind of fun to hold out there, and it made interesting gameplay. Octane was actually one of the better maps. Sure, there was a lot of sight lines going right through the middle of the map, but for the most part, it worked pretty well here, and I think a lot of people liked that map. Tremor was another one that didn't have as many problems because while it didn't quite do the 3-lane thing, it more did like a 4-lane wraparound, so it worked a lot better than some of the other maps. Freight was a pretty big map, but it actually worked pretty well here, and it gave good gameplay for running around with SMGs or assault rifles, but also holding back and using a sniper. Whiteout was a beautiful looking map, however, it really didn't work well here. The map was just too large and spread out, and you could spend a lot of time just walking around looking for people to fight in. Had they just used a section of the map probably would have worked great, but it's just way too big for this game. Stormfront is another example similar to Whiteout. The map is just huge. There's large buildings, large streets, and just really a ton of unnecessary things in the map that makes this one of the maps that likely would only end if time ran out, not because of a score limit being reached. Siege was another map that was just way too big for the game, and it looked pretty, it worked in Infection, and that was about it. Warhawk was a great map, and I think a ton of people liked it. This game also got a 24/7 playlist from time to time, and people enjoyed playing that for the most part because the map felt like a good Call of Duty map. Sovereign was one of the first Call of Duty indoor-only maps, and once again, it's still too big despite it being indoors. And there's these clunky machinery things going through the middle of the map that make movement really hard. Overlord was an okay map. It really wasn't that bad. It wasn't like a great map like something out of Modern Warfare 2, but it was fun and easily is one of the better maps to play on. I loved the way Stonehaven looked. It looked like a really beautiful map that hadn't been seen in the Call of Duty games before, but it was way too big. The sightlines were way too varied and really actually tanked the FPSs on a ton of people's consoles. This map really just didn't work in Call of Duty at all. It's probably the worst map in this game. And then there was Chasm, which was okay of a map. It was similar to something out of Black Ops 2, but it still was a little bit too big. And Flooded, which actually worked really well in certain games, but for overall gameplay, it just kind of missed the mark, and the water was pretty annoying to die in. And then there was Strike Zone, the smallest map in the game, which actually was just a recreation of Dome if you look at the map, except the elevation is adjusted. This map was actually pretty fun. I don't know why they had to remake Dome in the game again, even though this map was there, but they also remade Dome in the DLC later. And then finally Freefall, which was a map I actually kind of liked, except it doesn't make any sense why anyone would be fighting on a tower while it's collapsing instead of trying to evacuate the tower, but I digress. The DLCs in this game were actually pretty good, even though a little bit larger, but for the most part they were scaled down and they looked amazing. However, for the sake of this video, since most people don't play on the DLCs anymore, we're gonna pass on talking about them, but they did look really nice. The game also had a really easy cosmetic system before loot boxes were a thing, so you could easily just go ahead and buy a character if you thought they looked cool, or buy a skin if you thought it looked nice, and I really appreciated that. I missed those days before you had to get loot boxes to decide whether or not you could get an item that you wanted. Despite all the hate that this game gets, you can still tell that there was a lot of love and effort put into making a good Call of Duty game. At its core, there was a ton of content, and the game was easily accessible. There wasn't a lot of BS other than the map design that caused for multiplayer gameplay to fall through. However, I must say, as a mini-game or custom game advocate, I really did enjoy Call of Duty Ghosts for its gun game, which is still to date my personal favorite Call of Duty game to play gun game on, and its infection mode were really fun. For hardcore gamers, that doesn't matter, but for the people like me who like that, Call of Duty Ghosts was great for that, and this is the only Call of Duty game I prestiged 7 times in, because I played gun games so much. And to this day, there's still an active community playing Call of Duty Ghosts, on the Xbox 360 and PS3 that is. Yeah, because this game came out during the awkward shift to the next generation, the online communities to this game are split between a total of 5 different consoles instead of the typical 3. That being said, the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions of this game still get between 4,000 and 7,000 players online at a time. Sometimes it can dip a little bit lower, but you're still looking at a consistent player base. The Xbox One and PS4 versions don't do as well, having a couple hundred players, and oh my god, if you try playing on the PC, you just shouldn't try, because no one plays on the PC. Seriously, at any given moment you might get as many as 60 players online if you're lucky, but most likely you'll get put in a game with a hacker who's hacking a game with less than 100 people playing for whatever reason, and you will never get a full lobby. It's really not worth buying on the PC, period, and we recommend buying it on the Xbox 360, even if you have an Xbox One, because the 360 version of Call of Duty Ghosts is actually backwards compatible. This really should have been one of the first Call of Duty games to have cross-compatible play, especially at least between the 360 and the Xbox One. Unfortunately, that's not the case, so we still recommend the 360 version, and I guess the PS3 version, over any other version of this game. There was one more feature in this game we didn't really get to talk about as much, which was Extinction mode, kind of Infinity Ward's own version of zombies, or trying to do something different than just putting zombies in their game. And it was actually pretty fun. Instead of just holding out forever, though, there is a start and finish. And the DLC versions of Extinction were a pretty good time too. It's fun for about an hour or 2 hours, and maybe you'll play through it once or twice, but once you beat it, there's no real reason to come back to it. However, holding out and buying upgrades and just making your way through the course is pretty fun, and it's unique. And that's kind of neat. While games like Modern Warfare 2 and Black Ops get really high scores like A's and A-minuses, Call of Duty Ghosts fails to capture that same amazingness that those games had. But it's not bad either, and there's a lot of charm here. The game doesn't fail by any means. I was debating what score to give this game, and I kind of want to give it more of a letter score, and maybe that's something we'll shift into doing in the future. We'll think about it. But we're giving this game a B-, and that score goes strictly to the Xbox 360 and PS3 versions of the game, not the Xbox One or PS4 or PC. Oh my god. We don't really recommend you try playing those versions of the game. Okay, that's it for today. This video's gone way too long. Luke's gonna be mad at me. But guys, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, be sure to subscribe and turn notifications on. Also, we finally got the little join button. If you like discussions on Xbox 360 titles or Xbox One, or just kind of looking back at the glory days of the Xbox, consider joining and supporting our channel, or at the very least, just throw us a sub our way. We'd appreciate that too. Alright everyone, thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time with a brand new video.